Hey, how you doing? This is Adam Post, publisher of more than 1,000 comic books and marketing expert covering Hollywood panic as broke studio plans massive layoffs and sells off pieces of the company. Let's get into the story. Before we do, please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications. Give me a thumbs up. I really appreciate you guys. And you can support the channel by becoming a channel member. Click the join button next to the subscribe button to find out more. Hollywood did this to themselves. They decided not to focus on entertainment, not to focus on business, but to now incorporate this concept of diversity, equity, and inclusion in everything they did. And Paramount in particular picked the perfect executive for this, Marva Smalls. She's on their leadership team, which means these are the top executives leading the company. Marva Smalls is one of 20 people, and going back now years at Paramount, she's been working diversity and inclusion concepts into their entertainment, into their hiring, into their management, and producing the kind of entertainment that's brought Paramount to its knees. Take a look at this from Breitbart. Bloodbath at Paramount as studio announces $500 million in cuts. And they're not just cutting expenses, and they're not just laying off a few people. Yeah, there will be massive layoffs. They will shut a lot of offices down. But they're also going to be selling off pieces of their company. That doesn't even account for how many people are going to lose their jobs when the pieces they sell off are merged into another company. The job losses and the loss of value at this company are going to be astronomical. It could be an overstatement to say that diversity, equity, inclusion is responsible for this company's problems, but it really isn't. This is going back all the way to 2019. Viacom's Marva Smalls on leading with diversity. Quote, the business case for diversity is this: you can't survive without it. Now, it's one thing if a college professor says that, who has no power except to brainwash their students, but it's another thing when a high-level executive at a company that actually gets listened to by all the other high-level executives at the company and is allowed to interact with the people that produce the TV shows and movies they're trying to sell. You can see how diversity was the beginning of the end for Paramount. Here's just a small piece from their interview. This may seem obvious, but why should diversity and inclusion be a priority for a company? She responds, first, diversity without inclusion is tokenism. If a person takes a Noah's Ark approach to diversity, give me two of them, and two of them, that isn't going to be effective. You have to take the time to ensure you're creating an environment where people aren't just sitting in a room, but they're participating. So it's not enough to hire people who are not going to be productive. You need to make it like playtime. You need to have people interacting with those people and making sure they're getting a chance to contribute. Because if they didn't, then that wouldn't be inclusion. That's the diversity part is hiring people without merit. The inclusion part is distracting everyone else at the company who's trying to actually do their work, produce something productive, and have a career, being completely thrown off track because they're focusing on these new hires that have certain skin colors but don't actually contribute anything to the company. She continues, we're a company that serves many diverse audiences. We need thought leadership, experiences, and people who reflect those audiences. And here's a key question. Now that Paramount is on fire, now that it's falling apart at the seams, now that they're forced to lay off people, unqualified and qualified alike, just to keep up with their massive losses and to try to stay afloat. So now we find out the focus of diversity and what diversity has to say about the bottom line at a company. Keeping in mind, this was 5 years before today. They ask her, how does having a diverse staff impact a company's bottom line? Which legitimately is actually a good question. Obviously, you know my point of view. It's unproductive and it's a distraction for the people that actually are working at the company and trying to build a career for themselves. Many of whom are getting laid off because of this nonsensical distraction of trying to create play dates for people of certain skin colors while they're at work with people who are actually trying to work. So how does it affect the company's bottom line? She responds, I like to ask this question before I quote McKinsey statistics. McKinsey, in my humble opinion, is putting out bad statistics. They sell these DEI consulting services to companies. So McKinsey makes up stats that sound like this. Diverse-led organizations are 39% more likely to outperform those lacking diversity, 12 times more likely to engage and retain employees, 8.5 times more likely to satisfy and retain customers. Now, of course, all of that information is nonsense. And Paramount would not be on fire and falling apart if any of that were even 5 to 10% true. But it's not true. But let's hear what Marva has to say. If someone said, I can give your business a 30 to 40% uptick out of the gate, what person would say no? Companies that are gender diverse are doing it and have 15% more share and growth potential. Those that are actually ethnically diverse, 35%. When you put those two together, you have an automatic impact on the bottom line. If you have any work experience or business experience, you know what she said is completely ridiculous and it's total nonsense. She just finished explaining in this same interview, it's not just me, how you need to have people babysit your diverse employees because they're not capable of including themselves in the work because they weren't qualified when you hired them in the first place. She continues, we want people who understand, who can create, who can program, who have authentic experiences with different audiences. For example, if Asian Americans are the fastest growing consumer population and consumers of digital and apps, don't you want to know there's someone who understands that audience? It is a direct deposit to the bottom line. The business case for diversity is this: you can't survive without it. So because someone is Asian and has had Asian experiences, they're capable of producing and marketing Asian content that Asian audiences are going to buy. If any of this was effective, the company would not be on fire right now. Marva's diversity obsession is also responsible for this. From Deadline, CBS claims First Amendment allows it to select writers, quote, best suited for its programs in discrimination lawsuit response. This is about the SEAL team writer who was white, who was told he can't work on a show because he's white. They wanted someone with a different skin color to work on that show. Sounds exactly like what Marva Smalls is quoted here talking about. We need someone who's Asian to write for Asians, so we're not going to hire a writer who's not Asian. And keeping in mind that writers operate on a team basis. They're not operating independently, writing the entire script in most shows. And this lawsuit is the first lawsuit to challenge Hollywood, where Hollywood defended themselves with saying it was their First Amendment right to discriminate against people because of their skin color. Disney is discriminating against Gina Carano, claiming that they don't like what she has to say for herself, so it's Disney's First Amendment right to not hire her to work on a show. All based on an abuse of corporations' free speech rights. Here's how bad it is over at Paramount. From The Hollywood Reporter, Paramount chiefs to staff, we're cutting $500 million in costs after unacceptable profit drops. The trio of CEOs, because they have 3 people operating essentially as a CEO group, because the other CEO left. Many people have been leaving Paramount, and they should leave Paramount because it's a complete disaster over there. Even these guys don't know what Paramount's going to be a year or 2 from now. The trio of co-CEOs told employees at a town hall Tuesday that bankers have been hired to sell unspecified assets to help pay down debt and strengthen our balance sheet. The bankers are investment bankers. These are deal makers. They can take a business unit and find a customer for it and make a deal and get them some quick cash. They'll get quick cash. It won't be enough. And the reason why they aren't telling their employees, these are the units we're selling, they have no plan. They don't know what they're going to do. They need the investment bankers to look over everything and say, okay, well, we think we can get you some money for CBS. They own CBS. We think we can get you money for these cable channels. We think we can get you money for the Paramount studio lot, which they might be selling and having to lease back. If it sounds like a complete disaster, it is a complete and total disaster. And you can thank this lady for it. And the people that told her, sure, do whatever you want. We want diversity and we want inclusion. We just don't need profits or to keep our company. Let's completely evaporate a business that took decades to build. Coming from Breitbart, bloodbath at Paramount as studio announces $500 million in cuts. Paramount will soon begin selling off pieces of the studio and cutting $500 million in overhead, which means massive staffing cuts. Paramount's 3 co-CEOs brought some 500 employees together to explain to them what's coming. The good news, revenues have increased 13% over the last 5 years. The bad news, operating income collapsed 61%. The good news, the Paramount Plus streaming service boosted subscribers from 67.5 million to 71 million during this last quarter. The bad news, during this same quarter, Paramount Plus lost $286 million. But we're looking at selling certain Paramount-owned assets, one of them told the group. In fact, we've already hired bankers to assist us in this process, and we'll use the proceeds to help pay down debt and strengthen our balance sheet. Hollywood Reporter is suggesting it could be BET Networks or other linear TV assets like the non-CBS local TV stations they own. Could be MTV, Nickelodeon, Comedy Central, as well as potential assets like VidCon or even the free streaming service Pluto TV. Paramount has been executing a plan to slim down and scale up in streaming for several years now. And then the bomb dropped. The co-CEOs explained that they want to start modernizing the organization so we can move faster and be more nimble, with $500 million in annualized cost savings by eliminating duplicative functions and being more efficient with resources. And that can only mean one thing: brutal job cuts. What they do is they look at their office operations and they see, okay, well, what are we producing? Who's employed there? Do we really need to have 5 different offices that all do human resources, or 5 different offices that do production resources that could be combined all into one? They're going to be getting rid of a lot of people. There is no one working at Paramount that knows they can count on their job, because all the co-CEOs have figured out so far is that they know they need to cut expenses, and probably they do waste a lot of money. Think about how much money they've wasted on diversity alone. But they have no idea how they're going to reorganize the business, or if they even can get $500 million worth of cuts. They might wind up with even less cuts than this, but selling off more pieces of the business. Paramount is a company that should have focused on taking care of their customers, the people who are interested in seeing entertainment. Make the shows they want to watch. Honor the brands you own like Star Trek by producing on-brand content. They don't have the resources that a company like Disney has. They're forced to fix things while they're losing tons of money. And while there have been some management changes at Paramount, it's basically the same people who screwed the company up that are now saying they're going to fix it. Let me know what you think of all this in the comments below. Always love to see your ideas. Please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications, give me a thumbs up, and I'll see you again soon with another story. And if I don't see you, I will miss you.